The year was 2287 when the alien ships arrived above Earth, and everyone knew humanity was in serious trouble. Commander Daniel Price stood on the bridge of the human warship called Horizon and watched 36 massive vessels position themselves near Mars. Each alien ship was the size of a small moon, and their technology was far beyond anything humans had ever built. The aliens called themselves the Calreth Hegemony, and they had sent a message that played on every screen and speaker across Earth and all the human colonies. The message was clear and direct. Humans had 72 hours to surrender completely or face total destruction. The Calreth explained that human weapons were too weak and human technology was too primitive to matter. Resistance would be pointless and stupid. Commander Daniel stood next to his second officer, Kate Morrison, and both of them stared at the alien formation with grim faces. Kate crossed her arms and said the aliens already believed they had won before any fighting even started. Daniel agreed, because every measurement and calculation showed the Calreth had superior firepower and better defenses. But Kate shook her head slowly and suggested the aliens did not understand humans very well at all. The next 72 hours became a desperate rush of preparation and planning. Human diplomats on Earth tried to negotiate for more time, while military leaders activated something called Protocol Ragnarok. This was a secret plan designed specifically for situations where humanity faced an overwhelming alien invasion with no hope of winning through normal combat. Admiral Gregory Hayes was the highest-ranking military officer in the United Earth Defense Force, and he was a man in his 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen many battles. He spoke to all his commanders through secure communication channels and told them humanity was about to show these alien invaders what happens when you corner a human and leave them no escape. Humans might not have energy shields or faster-than-light travel, but they had spent 300 years perfecting the art of throwing metal projectiles at extremely high speeds. The plan was both simple and completely insane at the same time. The Calreth had abandoned kinetic weapons thousands of years ago because they preferred energy beams and plasma cannons. Their shields were built to absorb and dissipate energy attacks, but nobody had tested them against solid metal moving at incredible velocities. Captain Alex Stone commanded a ship called Valiant, and his vessel had been equipped with the most powerful railgun humanity had ever constructed. The weapon could accelerate a tungsten rod to 5% of light speed and had originally been designed to bombard fortified positions on planets from orbit. Alex and his crew prepared their weapons and waited for orders. When the Calreth deadline expired, the aliens immediately attacked a moon base called Luna 7. Their single warning shot completely destroyed the base shields in 4 seconds and killed 3,000 people instantly. The human response was immediate and overwhelming. 97 human warships opened fire at exactly the same moment. Tungsten rods streaked through space, invisible to sensors, until they started punching through Calreth shields like they were made of paper. The alien defensive systems had never been designed to stop solid projectiles traveling at such extreme speeds. Alex watched through his viewport as his railgun round hit a Calreth destroyer right in the middle section. The metal rod did not explode or detonate because it did not need to. The kinetic energy alone vaporized everything in its path and tore the alien ship completely in half. The weapons officer Sam Cooper reported target destroyed and immediately began reloading for another shot. But the Calreth learned quickly, and their fleet scattered into evasive patterns. Return fire started hammering the human formation with energy weapons that could boil entire oceans. Human ships began dying fast. The Defiant vanished in a flash of light, and the Warrior lasted only 3 seconds longer before exploding into debris. Admiral Hayes ordered all ships to take evasive maneuvers and make themselves harder to hit while continuing to fire at will. The battle continued for 6 brutal hours, and humanity lost 43 ships, while the Calreth lost only 18 vessels. By conventional military standards, the battle was clearly a defeat for Earth, but as the surviving human ships retreated back toward the inner solar system, Daniel allowed himself a small smile. The aliens were bleeding, and nobody had expected that outcome. Kate noticed the change in Calreth formation and pointed out that the aliens looked scared for the first time. She was absolutely right, because the Calreth fleet had pulled back to a defensive position beyond Mars' orbit and stopped pursuing. For the first time in 10,000 years, the hegemony had encountered a species that could actually hurt them in combat. 6 hours after the battle ended, a new message arrived from the Calrith, and the tone was completely different from their original ultimatum. The aliens acknowledged human resistance and offered revised terms. Humans could keep partial control of their own government and maintain some autonomy if they agreed to supervision by hegemony administrators. This would avoid further bloodshed on both sides. Admiral Hayes transmitted a response to the entire human fleet explaining what had just happened. The Great Galactic Authority had just blinked and offered a compromise because humans had bloodied their nose. Hayes asked his commanders what that fact told them about their enemy. Daniel understood the implication immediately. The Calrith could be beaten and damaged and forced to negotiate. Humanity actually had a real chance to survive this war, but everyone also understood that the real fighting was only beginning now. The Calrith would return with reinforcements and better strategies. They would adapt to human tactics and come back stronger. The aliens had made a critical mistake, though. They had assumed that technology and military power were the only things that mattered in warfare. They had forgotten about human stubbornness and creativity. They had forgotten that humans had spent their entire history being told something was impossible and then doing it anyway. The ceasefire would not last long, but it gave humanity precious time to prepare better defenses and develop new weapons. Admiral Hayes gathered his surviving commanders and began planning the next phase of resistance. Earth would comply with Calrith demands on the surface, while secretly building hidden weapons throughout the solar system. Every asteroid could become a missile platform, and every colony could hide an arsenal. The Calrith hegemony would soon learn that occupying human space was very different from conquering it. The Calrith hegemony accepted the ceasefire after the battle near Mars, but they made their conditions very clear to humanity. Humans had exactly 6 months to show they were following hegemony integration rules, or the aliens would return and destroy everything. The Calrith established a blockade at the edge of the solar system and began sending groups of administrators to Earth to oversee human compliance. Colonel Lisa Grant had worked in special operations for 20 years before the aliens arrived, and now she found herself in a command bunker, 3 miles underground in Colorado. The room was full of representatives from every major Earth government and from all the human colonies on Mars and the outer moons. Lisa stood in front of holographic displays, showing Calrith ship movements and patrol patterns. She told the assembled leaders that humanity could not win against the aliens in open battle, but humans did not need to win that way. The goal was to make occupying human territory so expensive and difficult that the Calrith would eventually give up and leave. A delegate from Mars Colony named Peter Walsh shook his head and said Lisa was describing guerrilla warfare in space against an enemy that could destroy entire planets. Lisa replied with one simple word: yes. She explained that the alternative to fighting was permanent slavery under alien rule. The strategy they developed became known as the Terran Insurgency Protocol. And it was brutally simple. Humanity would pretend to comply with Calrith demands while secretly building a hidden military network throughout the solar system. Every asteroid mining station would be converted into a potential weapons platform. Every civilian cargo ship would be retrofitted with concealed railguns. Every colony dome would hide emergency arsenals underneath the living quarters. Lieutenant Jake Foster volunteered for one of the most dangerous assignments in the entire operation. He would infiltrate a Calrith administrative center on Earth and plant surveillance equipment while stealing encryption codes from alien computer systems. The Calrith had built their main compound in Geneva, where they processed thousands of human applications for technology licenses and trade permits every day. Jake approached the compound pretending to be a translator because thousands of humans had learned the Calrith language, hoping to get favorable treatment from the occupiers. The aliens were generally humanoid but much taller and thinner than humans, with skin that shimmered in different shades of blue and silver. Most Calrith regarded humans the way a scientist might look at laboratory animals. They showed detached curiosity mixed with obvious contempt. The Calrith administrator who interviewed Jake was named Vorath, and he spoke perfect English with mechanical precision. Vorath asked Jake why he wanted to serve the hegemony. Jake repeated words from the original alien ultimatum and said resistance was illogical, and he just wanted humanity to survive. Vorath studied Jake carefully with eyes that had 3 pupils each. The aliens said humans were interesting because they fought battles they could never win. Humans had damaged the Calreth fleet using primitive weapons, which suggested either great courage or incredible stupidity. Jake asked if it could be both, and Vorath actually seemed amused by the response. The alien assigned Jake to translation services and warned that failure to report daily would result in immediate termination. Jake spent 3 weeks working inside the compound and slowly mapping security systems while identifying weaknesses in alien defenses. The Calreth were extremely arrogant because their technology made them feel invulnerable. They did not bother with backup security measures, and they constantly underestimated human cleverness and determination. When Jake finally extracted the encryption keys and delivered them to Lisa's intelligence team, the results were absolutely staggering. Humanity now had complete access to Calreth fleet communications and supply routes and military protocols. Lisa scrolled through mountains of stolen data and could hardly believe what she was reading. The aliens were stretched very thin across their empire. They were fighting 3 other major insurgencies in different sectors of the galaxy. Humans were not the only species that had refused to kneel and surrender. Meanwhile, Captain Nicole Barnes was leading a completely different kind of mission in the asteroid belt. She commanded a squadron of stealth drones, and each one was equipped with a railgun and enough fuel for exactly 1 attack run. Her orders were simple: harass Calreth supply convoys and make the blockade unsustainable through constant small attacks. Nicole's first target was a hegemony transport carrying shield generators to the main fleet staging area. Her drones approached from the direction of the sun, so their radar signatures were masked by solar radiation. They fired at point-blank range, and 6 tungsten rods completely destroyed the transport before it could send any distress signal. The tactical officer Chris Bennett confirmed target eliminated, with no survivors detected. Nicole felt no satisfaction from the kill. She only felt grim determination to continue the mission. She ordered her team to mark the location because the Calreth would definitely send a search party, and human forces would be waiting in ambush. Over the following months, the insurgency grew stronger and more coordinated. Calreth ships started disappearing regularly in the outer solar system. Supply depots suffered mysterious explosions and sabotage. Administrative centers experienced convenient power failures that allowed human prisoners to escape during the confusion. The hegemony responded with increasing brutality. They bombarded suspected resistance bases and executed captured insurgents in public displays meant to terrorize the population. But the Calreth were slowly learning a lesson that countless occupiers throughout human history had learned the hard way. You cannot successfully occupy a population that absolutely refuses to stay occupied. Admiral Gregory Hayes reviewed casualty reports every day, and the numbers were terrible. Thousands of humans were dying in the insurgency. But Calreth losses were also mounting steadily. The blockade was costing the aliens far more resources than they had anticipated spending. Commander Daniel Price attended a strategy session and asked Hayes how long humanity could sustain this level of fighting. Hayes replied that humans would keep fighting as long as necessary. The Calreth had made a fundamental mistake in their invasion planning. They assumed humans would break and surrender like most other species the hegemony had conquered over thousands of years. The aliens did not realize that humans had been fighting impossible wars throughout their entire history and had gotten extremely good at surviving against overwhelming odds. The major turning point came when a frustrated Calreth admiral requested authorization to systematically destroy human cities as a deterrent against further resistance. The request was denied by the Hegemony Central Council, but not because they felt any mercy toward humans. The council refused because genocide would make humanity even more difficult to control and might provoke intervention from other galactic powers who maintained at least a pretense of civilized behavior. Lisa received the intercepted communication with deep satisfaction. The Calreth were trapped in an impossible situation. They could not leave Earth without looking weak to other species, but they could not stay without bleeding resources they needed elsewhere. Humanity had them caught in a strategic vice. But even as the resistance celebrated this small victory, disturbing rumors began spreading through underground networks. The Calreth were bringing in military specialists who were trained specifically in counterinsurgency operations. The easy victories were about to become much harder and bloodier. 18 months after the Calreth occupation began, a physicist named Henry Carter made a discovery that would change everything about the war. Henry had been working on quantum communication systems before the aliens arrived, and now he worked in a secret laboratory carved deep into the ice of Europa. The facility was one of dozens of hidden research sites where humanity's best scientists pursued seemingly impossible research projects. The breakthrough came from studying debris recovered from destroyed Calreth ships. Human salvage teams risked their lives constantly to retrieve pieces of alien technology from battle sites. Henry focused specifically on one component that appeared in every ship: the faster-than-light drive core. Henry called a virtual conference with scientists scattered across the solar system, including Rachel Kim on Mars, and Paul Martinez at the lunar facility, and Sophie Chen aboard a research station hidden in the asteroid belt. He explained that his team had been completely wrong about how the Calreth achieved faster-than-light travel. Humans had assumed the aliens warped space-time or accessed higher dimensions somehow, but the Calreth did something entirely different. They used quantum tunneling on a massive scale to move entire ships. Rachel leaned forward during the video conference and asked if Henry was saying the aliens basically teleported from place to place. Henry said, "Not exactly, but close enough for practical purposes." The Calreth created quantum probability waves that existed in multiple locations at the same time, and then collapsed those waves at whatever destination they wanted. It was teleportation, with several extra complicated steps. Paul looked very skeptical and pointed out that humans were probably centuries away from replicating that kind of advanced technology. Henry pulled up detailed schematics on the shared screen and asked if that was really true. He explained that the Calreth system was incredibly complex because they were trying to transport entire starships weighing millions of tons. But what if humans scaled the technology down dramatically? What if humans only tried to move small objects through quantum space? Sophie immediately understood what Henry was suggesting. He wanted to teleport weapons instead of ships. Henry confirmed her guess and specified that he meant tungsten rods fired from railguns. Humans did not need to send people through quantum tunnels. They just needed to put railgun projectiles inside enemy ships where shields could not stop them. The implications were absolutely staggering for military planning. If humanity mastered even crude quantum teleportation, they could bypass Calreth shields entirely. The alien technological advantage would basically disappear overnight. But theory was completely different from practical implementation. Henry's team spent 8 months testing the concept. They experienced 17 major equipment failures during development. 3 researchers died in a catastrophic containment breach when a quantum tunnel collapsed unexpectedly. But eventually the team successfully teleported a 1-kilogram test mass from Europa to Mars. Admiral Gregory Hayes received a classified briefing about the breakthrough through secure channels. Daniel Price and Lisa Grant attended the meeting because both had been cleared for the secret project. Hayes asked the most important question immediately: how reliable was the new technology? Henry appeared on the communication screen, looking completely exhausted. He explained that the system could hit a target the size of a Calreth cruiser from anywhere in the solar system with 87% accuracy. The failure rate meant some projectiles would emerge in random locations or not materialize at all, but the ones that worked correctly would appear directly inside the target ship. Lisa whistled softly and summarized the tactical advantage: no shields, and no warning, and no defense, just sudden catastrophic hull breach. Henry confirmed that assessment and said the project was being called Operation Shockwave. The first real combat test targeted a Calreth surveillance station orbiting Venus. Commander Beth Sullivan supervised the attack from a bunker on Earth, with her finger hovering over the activation controls. The technician beside her was a young man named Ryan Clark, who monitored the targeting systems. Ryan announced that target acquisition was complete, and the quantum tunnel was stable, and all systems were ready to fire. Beth gave the order, without hesitation. 3,000 kilometers away, a railgun mounted on a hidden platform fired a tungsten rod. But instead of traveling through normal space, the projectile simply vanished as it left the barrel. An instant later, It reappeared inside the Calrith surveillance station. The result was absolutely spectacular. The station's fusion reactor ruptured immediately, and the entire structure came apart in a massive burst of radiation and spinning debris. Ryan reported target destroyed and noted that Calrith response vessels were converging on the area but seemed very confused. The aliens could not figure out where the attack had originated. Beth allowed herself a brief smile. The Calrith were confused because humans had not fired from any location the aliens could trace or detect. Over the next 3 weeks, humanity launched 17 separate quantum railgun strikes against Calrith forces throughout the solar system. Cruisers exploded without any warning. Supply depots vanished in flashes of destructive light. The blockade fleet began withdrawing to positions much farther from Earth, as commanders tried desperately to get beyond range of this terrifying new human weapon. But the retreating Calrith did not understand the technology they were facing. Distance meant absolutely nothing to a quantum teleportation system. If you could teleport something 1 kilometer, you could teleport it 1 light year, with only slightly more power and complexity. Captain Alex Stone had survived the original Battle of Mars and numerous dangerous insurgent operations. Now, he found himself chosen to lead the mission that would break the hegemony's will to continue occupying Earth. His ship was called Retribution, and it was equipped with the most advanced quantum railgun system humanity had built. The target was a hegemony command carrier named Eternal Dominion. The massive ship served as flagship for Executor Zalvik, who was the Calrith admiral responsible for orchestrating the entire Earth blockade. The Eternal Dominion was positioned 3 light months beyond Pluto, in what the aliens considered completely safe territory far outside any possible human weapons range. Commander Sam Cooper served as weapons officer aboard Retribution and announced that target lock was confirmed. The system had established a clear quantum pathway, and all equipment was functioning normally. Alex took a deep breath before giving the order. This single shot would prove to the entire Calrith hegemony that nowhere in the galaxy was truly safe from human retaliation anymore. Alex ordered the railgun to fire. The magnetic coils discharged with a sound like rolling thunder. The tungsten rod accelerated to 8% of light speed and immediately vanished into quantum space. 3 seconds later, the projectile reappeared in the exact center of the Eternal Dominion's command bridge. Executor Zalvik had barely enough time to register the appearance of a metal rod, materializing in the middle of his control center. Then the kinetic energy tore through the flagship like it was made of tissue paper. The Dominion broke apart into large chunks. Its shields never activated because the threat came from inside. Its weapons never fired a single shot in response. The Calrith fleet completely panicked when they realized what had happened. Ships began jumping to faster than light speed, in random directions. They abandoned their carefully planned positions and their entire mission objective. Within 6 hours, the solar system was empty of hegemony forces, except for small garrison units trapped on Earth and Mars, with no way to escape. Daniel watched the tactical display with something close to wonder in his expression. The aliens were actually running away. Humanity had genuinely scared them off. But Admiral Hayes remained cautious about celebrating too early. They had won this particular battle, but the war was far from over. The hegemony controlled thousands of star systems and had access to thousands more warships. The aliens would return eventually, and next time, they would not make the mistake of underestimating human capabilities. Lisa nodded in agreement with Hayes' assessment. Humanity had just announced to the entire galaxy that humans had very sharp teeth and were willing to use them. That message would have consequences nobody could fully predict. The destruction of the Eternal Dominion sent massive shockwaves through the entire known galaxy. For 10,000 years, the Calrith hegemony had represented stability and order by crushing any species that dared challenge their authority. The idea that a primitive civilization could not only resist but actually defeat hegemony forces was completely unthinkable to most galactic powers. Within weeks, Earth began receiving strange communications from other alien species. Most messages were encoded in formats that humanity had never encountered before. Rachel Kim led a team of linguistics experts and artificial intelligence systems working constantly to decipher the incoming transmissions. The first message that was successfully translated came from a species calling themselves the Vorathi. Their representative spoke through a voice synthesizer and delivered a very simple statement. Humans had their attention, and they would observe what happened next. More messages followed rapidly from different sources. The Talarian Commonwealth expressed cautious interest in possible trade relationships. The Zentari Empire sent a stern warning that Earth should not attempt to expand beyond its own solar system. The Korathi Union transmitted specifications for secure communication protocols and provided an encrypted channel for future diplomatic contact. But the most significant message arrived from something called the Archon Collective. This was apparently a loose alliance of species that had successfully resisted Calrith domination for several centuries. Their ambassador was a being named Syrinx, who requested a direct face-to-face meeting with Earth's leadership. Ambassador Helen Gray was chosen to represent humanity in this critical first contact. She had been a career diplomat before the invasion and was known for remaining calm under pressure and having very sharp negotiating skills. Helen prepared carefully for a meeting that would take place on neutral ground at an abandoned mining station in the Kuiper Belt. The Archon delegation arrived in a ship that made Calrith technology look primitive by comparison. The vessel was smaller than a human frigate but radiated energy signatures, suggesting weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets. Syrinx emerged from the ship wearing an environmental suit designed for methane-breathing organisms. Their body was vaguely insect-like, with 6 limbs and large compound eyes. Syrinx's voice came through a translation device that converted their native language into perfect English. The ambassador told Helen that her species had accomplished something truly remarkable. The hegemony had not retreated from a claimed star system in over 4,000 years. Helen chose her words very carefully because this conversation would shape humanity's future. She said Earth was honored by the visit, but also aware that humans had made extremely powerful enemies. Humanity needed allies desperately. Syrinx replied that allies required mutual trust as a foundation. The ambassador asked directly how humans had developed quantum teleportation technology so quickly. Helen decided complete honesty was the best approach. She explained that human scientists had reverse-engineered the technology from hegemony wreckage. Desperation made for excellent motivation. Syrinx's translation device made a sound that might have been laughter. The ambassador said the Archon Collective wished to propose a technology exchange. They would provide humans with enhanced shield technology and improved faster-than-light drive specifications. In return, Earth would share complete quantum weapons research. Helen asked what would happen if humanity refused the offer. Syrinx explained that Earth would face the hegemony completely alone when the aliens inevitably returned. And the Calrith would definitely return because what humanity accomplished was only a tactical victory and not a strategic one. The hegemony had 500 full war fleets. Earth had only faced a single fleet. The negotiations continued for 3 very long days. Helen eventually secured an agreement that gave Earth access to technology that would normally take centuries to develop independently. In exchange, humanity provided quantum teleportation theory and agreed to a mutual defense pact with the Archon Collective. It was definitely a calculated risk, but humanity had very few realistic options available. Meanwhile, Captain Nicole Barnes found herself leading a very different and much stranger kind of mission. Earth intelligence services had intercepted Calrith communications indicating the hegemony was assembling a massive punitive fleet. But there were apparently serious internal divisions among Calrith leadership. Some commanders advocated extreme caution after learning to respect human military capabilities. Others demanded overwhelming force to restore hegemony, prestige, and authority. Nicole's assignment was to travel to a neutral trading station in Talarian Commonwealth space and make contact with Calrith dissidents who opposed the planned invasion. The mission sounded completely insane, but intelligence reports suggested real factions existed within the hegemony. Some Calrith apparently saw humanity as a potential partner, instead of just another primitive threat. The trading station was a massive orbital structure around a gas giant. It served as home to dozens of different alien species engaged in commerce and diplomacy. Nicole arrived dressed in plain civilian clothing, accompanied only by Chris Bennett and a diplomatic aide named Julia Pierce. Their contact was a Calrith officer, holding the rank of strategic coordinator. His name was Corvin, and he met the human delegation in a private meeting room that had been thoroughly swept for surveillance devices. Corvin spoke without any preliminary small talk. He said, Ambassador Gray's alliance agreement with the Archons had complicated matters significantly for hegemony leadership. The Central Council was badly divided. Some members saw the human alliance as definitive proof that Earth must be completely destroyed before becoming too powerful. Others saw genuine opportunity in the situation. Julia asked what kind of opportunity Corvin meant. The Calrith officer leaned forward and explained that the hegemony had become dangerously stagnant over thousands of years. They had conquered so much territory that no real challenges remained. Hegemony technology advanced very slowly now. The military had grown complacent from centuries of easy victories. Humanity represented something the Calrith had not encountered in millennia. Genuine innovation born from absolute desperation. Corvin said his faction wanted to study humans carefully. They wanted to understand how a species with clearly inferior technology had defeated hegemony forces in direct combat. Nicole kept her face neutral and pointed out that Corvin seemed to want humanity as a research project. Corvin corrected her immediately. He wanted to prevent a war that would cost millions of lives on both sides. If hardline factions in the Council prevailed, the hegemony would send a fleet of 3,000 warships to the solar system. No technology the Archons could provide would save Earth from that level of assault. But if humans agreed to a formal scientific and cultural exchange program, Corvin believed he could persuade enough council members to delay military action indefinitely. The proposal was brought before Earth's entire leadership council for debate. Admiral Hayes was deeply skeptical about Corvin's offer. It could easily be an elaborate trap designed to infiltrate human defenses and steal quantum weapons technology. But Lisa saw real strategic potential in the idea. Right now, the Calrith were completely united in viewing humanity as an existential threat. If Earth could create an internal faction that saw humans as valuable, the entire strategic situation would change dramatically. The debate among Earth's leaders continued for several weeks. Eventually, a careful compromise was reached. Humanity would accept a very limited scientific exchange program with strict security protocols and constant oversight. Calrith observers would be allowed to study human innovation methods and research approaches. In exchange, human scientists would gain controlled access to hegemony knowledge databases. Henry Carter volunteered to lead the human scientific delegation. His team would travel to a Calrith research station and work directly alongside alien scientists. They would share insights about human problem-solving while gathering as much intelligence as possible. Henry told his wife before departing that this mission was either the beginning of genuine peace or the biggest mistake humanity would ever make. She replied with a sad smile that it was probably both things simultaneously. As Earth prepared for this completely new phase of interaction, the Archon Collective began delivering on their technology promises. Advanced shield generators arrived along with detailed technical specifications that left human engineers amazed. The technology was elegant and efficient, and far beyond anything humanity had previously imagined possible. Beth Sullivan oversaw installation of the first Archon shield system on the warship Retribution. When the shields activated, they created a shimmering barrier of contained energy that could absorb damage equivalent to multiple nuclear detonations. Beth watched test results with satisfaction and said this technology changed everything. Combined with quantum weapons, humanity might actually stand against a full hegemony fleet. But Daniel, who had been promoted to admiral after Hayes retired, remained less optimistic. He pointed out that technology alone was never enough. The Calrith had thousands of years to perfect warfare. Humans needed to keep surprising the aliens and adapting faster than enemy forces could respond. The moment humanity became predictable, the war would be lost. 2 years after the Battle of Mars, Humanity had completely transformed from an isolated world on the edge of galactic civilization into a significant player in interstellar politics. The solar system now bristled with advanced defensive systems. Quantum railgun platforms were hidden throughout the asteroid belt. Shield generators protected every major colony. A fleet of powerful warships combined human innovation with Archon technology. Admiral Daniel Price stood on the bridge of a ship called Defiance, which was humanity's first capital vessel designed specifically for galactic-scale warfare. The ship was twice the size of the old Horizon and incorporated 2 years of desperate innovation. Its hull was covered with Archon shield projectors. Its weapons bays contained both conventional railguns and quantum teleportation systems. Its engines could push the massive vessel to 40% of light speed. Today, Defiance was leading a fleet of 30 human warships toward the Vorathi border, where a dangerous situation was rapidly developing. Captain Kate Morrison served as executive officer and consulted her tactical displays. She reported that Calreth fleet strength was estimated at 60 ships. The aliens were forming a blockade around Vorathi mining colonies and demanding tribute payments. The Vorathi had requested military assistance under the mutual defense protocols of the Archon Alliance. This moment was exactly what Earth had been preparing for since joining the Archon Collective. By accepting membership, humanity had agreed to defend other member species when they faced external threats. It was a critical test. If Earth failed to honor the agreement, humans would lose all their allies and face the hegemony completely alone again. Kate asked quietly if humanity was really going to war to protect aliens that most humans barely knew existed. Daniel remembered a conversation with Gregory Hayes before the old admiral retired. Hayes had said, "The moment you start choosing which allies to defend, you stop being an alliance. You just become a collection of cowards waiting for their turn to be abandoned." Daniel answered Kate with absolute certainty. Yes, humanity was doing this. He ordered all ships to advance to engagement range and prepare quantum strikes on designated targets. The Calreth commander was a military leader named Velok, who responded to Earth's arrival with obvious contempt. His message broadcast across all communication channels. He told humans they had no legitimate stake in this border dispute. He ordered Earth forces to withdraw immediately or face total destruction. Velok claimed the hegemony had learned from previous encounters. Human tricks would not work a second time. Daniel smiled grimly and told Kate to execute something called Plan Cascade. This was a completely new tactical approach, developed by Henry Carter's science team during their exchange program with Calreth researchers. While working alongside alien scientists, Henry had made a startling discovery about a critical weakness in hegemony technology. The shields used by Calreth warships were calibrated specifically to resist energy weapons. They required extremely precise frequency modulation to remain stable and functional. If you hit those shields with quantum teleported objects that materialized inside the shield envelope, the resulting instability would cascade through the entire defensive grid like a chain reaction. The human fleet did not fire conventional weapons at Calreth ships. Instead, they teleported hundreds of small drones into the space between enemy shields and ship hulls. Each drone carried sophisticated sensor equipment and powerful signal jamming systems. When all the drones activated simultaneously, the interference patterns completely disrupted shield cohesion across the entire Calreth formation. The tactical officer reported that enemy shields were failing throughout their fleet. The aliens were trying desperately to compensate, but the cascade effect was spreading faster than they could respond. Now Daniel ordered a conventional strike using regular railguns. All weapons would fire rapid sequences to completely overwhelm disabled alien defenses. Tungsten rounds streaked across empty space, no longer needing quantum teleportation because the shields protecting enemy vessels were completely down. The Calreth fleet had been caught by total surprise, and ships began taking devastating hits throughout their formation. Vessels broke apart, trying to restore defensive systems while simultaneously returning fire. But humanity had gained one additional advantage. 3 massive Archon dreadnoughts emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the combat zone. Their weapons arrays glowed with barely contained power. The Calreth suddenly found themselves outnumbered and outgunned in their own operation. Velok made the only logical choice available. He ordered all hegemony forces to withdraw immediately. The issue would be contested through diplomatic channels, instead of military action. The Calreth fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, and left the battlefield to the victors. Daniel allowed himself one moment of relief before requesting damage reports and casualty counts from all ships. Miraculously, humanity had lost only 2 vessels, with 3 more suffering significant damage. The Varathi were extremely grateful for Earth's intervention, and immediately offered mining rights and technology-sharing agreements as payment. Back on Earth, the military victory was celebrated widely, but Lisa saw a much larger strategic picture developing. She briefed the United Earth Council on the current situation. Humanity had proven capable of fighting the hegemony and winning battles, but that success had made Earth a target. Every species with grievances against the Calreth would now view humans as potential allies or weapons to use against mutual enemies. Humanity was being drawn into conflicts spanning the entire galaxy. Ambassador Helen agreed completely with Lisa's assessment. The Talarian Commonwealth had requested human assistance in a border dispute with neighbors. The Zentari Empire offered a non-aggression pact in exchange for quantum weapons technology. The Korathi Union wanted to hire human mercenaries for security operations. Earth needed to decide quickly what kind of galactic power humanity would become. The debate that followed would define the future of human civilization for generations. Some leaders argued for isolation. They wanted to use Earth's newfound strength to secure the solar system completely and avoid any galactic entanglements. Others advocated aggressive expansion. They wanted to build a human empire capable of rivaling the hegemony in size and power. Henry proposed a third option that appealed to moderates in the council. Humanity did not need to conquer territory or hide behind defenses. Humans needed to keep innovating constantly. Every time Earth faced an impossible challenge, humans found creative solutions. That adaptability was the real strength of the species. It mattered more than weapons or tactics. The compromise that emerged from weeks of debate became known as the Terran Doctrine. Earth would honor all alliance obligations but would not seek territorial expansion beyond the solar system. Instead, humanity would offer technological partnerships and defensive agreements to other species. The goal was building a network of allies bound together by mutual interest rather than force or fear. Meanwhile, inside Calreth Space Coordinator Corvin's reformist faction had grown significantly stronger. Repeated defeats at human hands had badly shaken hegemony confidence and created political space for major changes. Corvin proposed something truly radical for a civilization built on dominance. Instead of conquering other species by force, the hegemony should create genuine partnerships based on shared benefits and mutual respect. The idea was absolutely revolutionary for Calreth culture and faced fierce resistance from traditional military commanders. But the hardline faction could not ignore basic reality anymore. Every attempt to crush humanity had failed completely. Every battle had cost the hegemony resources they could not afford to lose, while fighting multiple insurgencies across their empire. The war that might have consumed half the galaxy instead became a complex negotiation. Representatives from Earth and the Archon Collective and the Calreth hegemony and dozens of other powers gathered at a neutral station. They worked for months, hammering out what eventually became known as the Accord of Stars. The terms were extremely complex, but the core principle was simple and clear. All species would maintain complete sovereignty over their territory. Conflicts would be resolved through arbitration and negotiation rather than warfare. Technology would be shared to raise all civilizations rather than hoarded by the most powerful. Admiral Daniel attended the signing ceremony and stood beside Corvin and Cyrix. He thought about the incredible journey humanity had taken. Humans had gone from a primitive species facing extinction to a galactic power that fundamentally altered the balance of power among the stars. Kate stood beside Daniel and asked quietly if he thought the peace would last. Daniel watched various ambassadors signing the accord. Each one represented billions of lives and thousands of years of history. He said no. Peace never lasted forever throughout history. But maybe it would last long enough for everyone to build something better than what existed before. Maybe that was the best anyone could realistically hope for. Years later, historians across the galaxy would debate the long-term impact of humanity's emergence on interstellar civilization. Some called it the human shockwave, the moment when a single species proved the old order could be challenged successfully. Others called it the Great Reorganization, when the galaxy learned to value innovation over rigid tradition. But for the humans who had lived through the desperate struggle and fought impossible battles and made crazy gambles, it was simply survival. They had faced complete extinction and refused to accept that fate. They had looked at a galaxy full of older and more advanced civilizations and decided humans deserved a seat at the table. Alex, who was now retired and teaching at the Naval Academy on Mars, liked to tell his students one particular story. When the Calreth first arrived and told humans they were primitive and weak, the aliens were absolutely right. By every objective measure, the hegemony should have crushed Earth easily. But the Calreth made one critical mistake. They assumed technology and military power were the only things that mattered in conflict. They forgot about will and creativity. They forgot that humans had spent their entire history being told something was impossible and then doing it anyway. He would pause and look at young faces before him. The next generation would inherit the galaxy that humanity had fought to join. He told them to never forget the lesson Earth had learned. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest. But humans were the ones who turned railguns into quantum teleporters and made the impossible routine. That was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to survive.